Your global campaign just launched. But wait, the logo's cropped, the colors are off, and did legal clear that image? When teams create without guardrails, mistakes slip through. But not with Adobe Express, the quick and easy app to create on-brand content. Brand kits and lock templates make following design guidelines a no-brainer for HR, sales, and marketing teams. And commercially safe AI powered by Firefly lets them create confidently, so your brand always shows up polished, protected, and consistent everywhere. Learn more at adobe.com/go/express.
How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Hello, America. Welcome. It is an open line Friday here on the Eric Erickson Show. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, P. Diddy is being sentenced in court right now. Fox, CNN, they're all covering P. Diddy going to jail. My son has been referring to the P. Diddy Bowl in hockey. The Predators play the Oilers, and my son's like, Dad, we got to start calling it the P. Diddy Bowl. The Oilers versus Predators, the P. Diddy Bowl, according to my son. He wants to be an architect, but also a stand-up comedian. The P. Diddy sentencing happening right now, but that's not where I want to start. I'm not going to start with the government shutdown. I am not. I'm not going to start with the invasion of Memphis, though we'll get there. The Netflix trans indoctrination. I am going to start with the war that Donald Trump has started. Now, two things here. Yep, the president started a war, or at least says we are in a war. There are two things. First, tangent to the question here is, do you feel like the government shut down? Do you feel like the government is shut down? Life goes on. I look outside my studio window. There are construction workers are working on a bridge. They're working on the interstate. Never-ending interstate road construction in Middle Georgia that my office looks out onto. This project's been going on since 2019. It's still got a year or two left. I see up in the air, so my office is on the flight path between Florida and Atlanta, and I can see a Delta plane. Looks like it's headed into Atlanta right now, coming in from somewhere in Florida. Looks like it's a 757, although it's still high in the sky. But they run 757s between Jacksonville and Orlando and Delta in Atlanta. So the planes are going. There's an ambulance off in the distance going into the hospital. Life goes on. You don't feel it. You don't feel like we're in a war either, do you? The president says we're in a war, and it's an unseen war. The president has escalated the war on the drug cartels, and it is an under-the-radar war that the president intends to fight. And, in fact, he has told Congress that is his justification for what he did to the drug cartels and blowing up the ship. I got to say, by the way, some reporter for NBC News tracked down the wives of one of the men killed on that boat that we blew up headed out of Venezuela. And, of course, you know what she said? My husband's a farmer. My husband farms, and now we've been deprived of his livelihood. What? Did you really think she was going to say, yes, my husband works for the drug cartel? Come behind our house and go down into the shed that we built underground, and you'll find where we manufacture the cocaine. Really? We're supposed to take this woman at her word that her husband, who was on a high-speed boat with several other men, is just a farmer. They were going to farm their underwater crops in Atlantis. Really? No. The president's decided to do it. Jack Keane, General Jack Keane, he's got some thoughts on the cartels and weaponization. He was on Fox News. This is worth hearing.
Since President Trump returned to the White House, the State Department has already designated 19 new foreign terrorist organizations. Many of those cartels are drug trafficking street gangs. Here to discuss this is retired four-star General Jack Keane. General, do you agree with the president's assessment? We're in an armed struggle with cartels. So a terror group within a country that we might be friendly with, like Mexico.
Yeah, well, it's obvious the cartels are weaponizing drugs for their own profiteering, for sure. It's undermining American society. The health and welfare of our society has been seriously penetrated. Hundreds of thousands of people have been killed by fentanyl alone. The approach we've been taking isn't working. So this is an approach that's different, to be sure. We've stopped these boats in the past, but they keep coming. Now we're shooting the boats, and it's likely they're going to stop coming. The president, I think, is notifying Congress that he defines this as armed conflict, which legally then gives him the authority to treat it not just as a law enforcement and aggressive policing, where there's no threat to the police. Here, even though there's no threat to an armed military force, they can use that lethal force against them, even though there's no direct threat to them. Because why? It's an armed conflict.
It is an armed conflict. You know, they've been shooting at our border agents, and Barack Obama, when this started, did nothing. Joe Biden did absolutely nothing when they were shooting at our border agents. Here's one of the things that the cartels do. In Mexico, what they've done until Donald Trump became president, they did it under Barack Obama, but they really escalated it with Joe Biden. What the drug cartels would do is they would serve as coyotes for people trying to come into the United States illegally. So you're running from the gangs in Guatemala. You pay the Mexican drug cartel your entire life savings of $10,000, and they promise to get you across the border into the United States. And so you go with them to the border, and they cross you at the Rio Grande. And while you're crossing, you don't understand that you're bait. They make a commotion. The Border Patrol is alerted to a mass crossing of illegal aliens, and they come to detain you, and then the drug cartels have someone where the Border Patrol was, and they sneak the drugs into this country there. You've become bait. You've given them your life savings. You've become bait. You've paid them $10,000. They've gotten you into the United States, but have used you as a distraction. And what is so galling to the Border Patrol agents, on multiple occasions this has happened, is they get across the border with the drugs, and then they shoot off flares or fireworks so that the Border Patrol knows they've been played again. This has happened on multiple occasions in Texas. There are parts of the border that are so irresponsible that there are so irresponsible areas to cross that they don't even worry about putting up security in these areas, that there's just not a way to get into those areas. It would be irresponsible for even the drug cartels to try to cross those areas. Deep canyons, ravines, rattlesnakes, things like that. It becomes very, very dangerous. They don't try in those areas, but there are other areas where it's pretty easy. You just need a distraction, and that's where they go. And they bring fentanyl into this country. Interestingly enough, fentanyl is on the decline in this country. Why? Because Donald Trump has secured the border. But the drug dealers still want to make money on cocaine, on fentanyl, and on other substances, on marijuana laced with fentanyl to make it more potent and addictive. What do? They have submarines. I'm not kidding. They have submarines. They have high-speed boats. They have tunnels under the border in certain parts of the country, particularly in California, parts of Texas. They've tunneled underground to get into the country to deliver drugs. They also are targeting informants for death. They're targeting government officials outside this country for death. The president of the United States has said he has enough. He's had enough. We're treating it like a war. And we should, by the way, we should. It's very interesting. It's the Democrats who are screaming about this. Why is it every single thing Donald Trump is in favor of, the Democrats oppose? Why are you opposed to going to war with the drug cartels? We know many of them are collaborating with the Chinese. The Chinese have been manufacturing the base product needed to make the fentanyl, shipping it to Central and South America, where it's converted to fentanyl, pressed into pills, and brought into this country. And the Democrats are upset that Donald Trump is intent on stopping it. Y'all, Donald Trump needs to come out today and say oxygen is good and we should all take deep breaths, and please don't hold your breath. And we might just wipe out the Democratic Party. If he is for it, they will hold their breaths and die. That is where we're at right now. That is where we're at. The president has decided to declare war on the drug cartels, and Congress is like, we have a role in this. We have a role in this. You know, I actually know the Constitution of the United States of America. If the president of the United States wishes to go on offense, he actually does need Congress to authorize it or declare war. But if the president decides that it is a defensive protection for the people of the United States as the commander-in-chief of the American military, Congress doesn't have to do anything. The president can defend the borders of the United States without Congress. And so as the drug dealers are coming into this country, the president has decided to kill them instead of arrest them. And he should. And every other president should have done it. The fact that we can have a measurable reduction in the fentanyl crossing the border that we did not have during the Biden administration is proof the policy is working. You know, they're now manufacturing some new drug that's even more potent and deadly than fentanyl. It has an increased high. It's more addictive. It'll also kill you. And you know, I get this all the time. Why would they do this? Why would they make a drug that could kill so many people? It's so potent. Because they don't care about you. They are selling you drugs that are addictive, and they want you more addictive. And if they get the dosing right, you become highly addictive and you buy more drugs from them. If they get the dosing wrong, you die and they'll sell to someone else. They don't care about you. You're rationalizing a drug dealer. The drug dealers, by the way, are rational terrorists. They want to make money. They don't want to kill you. And oftentimes what they're doing with the fentanyl in this country is they're not selling you fentanyl. They're selling fentanyl to the local drug dealer, and the local drug dealer is trying to lace his drugs with it to make it more addictive, so you come back to him more and more, to increase the high, to make it more potent. And if the local drug dealer gets it wrong, well, the cartel's like, that's not on us. That's on him. You can send him to prison for murder, not us. They got the local drug dealers being the middleman. You know, my next door neighbor was a middleman for the drug cartels. He and his wife were in prison now for decades. He was tied to a tractor trailer truck that was pulled over and had like $20 million worth of marijuana, fentanyl, meth, cocaine in it. His wife, they had a grow house under their house. They were growing marijuana. Allegedly, they were trying to use the fentanyl to lace the marijuana they were growing to make it more potent, more addictive. The wife was supposedly sending the sons out into cars in the neighborhood at night that were unlocked, pulling guns out, shaving off the serial numbers and selling them on the black market. The husband was the keystone for the cartels from New York to Florida, here in Middle Georgia. He was overseeing the drug trade for the cartels. Nice suburban man, donated to the kids' school, sent him to a nice Christian school. Spent a lot of money in the local area, was a big donor, big philanthropist, always gone. People assumed he worked hard for his money. Oh, he did, selling drugs. The president can't target people like that as war criminals because they're American citizens and they're allowed due process. But the president sure as heck can target the drug cartels that are coming into this country, and he's doing it. And you can't tell me it's wrong. It's had a major and profound positive impact on the reduction of fentanyl and other drugs crossing into this country. It has worked. This president has done what other presidents said they would do. He's kept his promise, and it's having a measurable positive impact. And I'm very, very sorry if it upsets you that I'm in favor of the slaughter of the drug cartels, but I am, and so is he, and I think most Americans are. And again, this is another 80-20 issue where the Democrats have decided to be on the side of the 20% that support the drug cartels instead of the American citizens. Greetings, conversationalists. How are you? It's Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. It is an open line Friday here. We'll let you be a little more free with the topics. Just please don't be nuts. You can also text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777 and get the show notes, the live stream, the podcast. I got to confess, I lied to you guys yesterday. It was a lie of necessity, but you'll have to forgive me. I try never to lie to you. In fact, they tell me I'm too transparent with you guys. But I mentioned yesterday morning, I got up, I took my kid to school, had a charity event in Atlanta last night, took the kid to school, came home, took the dog out for my wife, who's still dealing with a broken foot. The dog brushed up on me and apparently still had poop on itself, and I had to change my clothes before I went to Atlanta. I lied. The truth is, I got halfway to Atlanta and kept smelling something and realized, but I didn't want the people at the charity event last night to realize that I had actually gone to a gas station. God bless you, Burt Jones, Lieutenant Governor, and Jones Petroleum for your brilliant gas station at exit 205 headed to Atlanta. It's the greatest bathrooms of any gas station you'll ever attend. This is not an ad. It's just the truth. So good. In fact, I went inside, bought Tide, had to wash my pants in the sink in the bathroom, and then wring out the pants and put on my wet pants. And I wear a brand called Rhone. I love this company, Rhone, R-H-O-N-E. They're wonderful clothes. And by the time I got to Atlanta, they were dry, and you'd have never known I had had dog poop on the pants and washed them out by hand in the sink of a gas station bathroom. It was perfect. But that was just the sort of day I had yesterday. And then I had a great dinner last night with some folks raising money for Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. And I got home, and I stayed up, and I did my show prep, and I went to sleep. And at 4:30 this morning, my phone rang, and I answered it. And it was my driver wanting to know where I was. But it's actually for my trip next Friday, not today. And I had misscheduled the pickup time for 4:30 in the morning today instead of 4:30 in the morning next week. And he was, well, not exactly pleased that he had gotten up that early to pick me up from a hotel. And it's next week, not this week. It's been an amazing week, hasn't it? I'm ready for the weekend. Let me tell you about my bank. They don't disappoint me. OldGloryBank.com. You can go to Old Glory Bank and you can get a bank at OldGloryBank.com/Eric. OldGloryBank.com/ERICK. You can get a no-fee checking, no-fee savings account. You can get a premium accounts. If you're in the military, they will waive fees for you on a number of their great accounts. You can reach out to them and ask at oldglorybank.com/Eric, oldglorybank.com/ERICK. You can do home loans. You can do car loans. If you're a business, you can get a business account, and they're not going to debank you. So the whole reason Old Glory Bank was started was to fight the debanking trends happening in this country. oldglorybank.com/ERICK. You can do CDs, you can do custodial accounts for your kids. You can even deposit cash. You can deposit cash at Old Glory Bank with 88,000 retail locations around the country, and it works. The app is fantastic and makes it really easy. OldGloryBank.com/ERICK, OldGloryBank.com/Eric, member FDIC, equal housing lender. Terms and conditions apply. Y'all, I'm going to use this opportunity for a real prayer request. It's been a crazy week. I'm not a morning person. I've been getting up in the mornings. My wife is finally in a boot. Her leg will be fine. Her foot will be fine. But prayer request, very important, very important, very, very important. This afternoon at 4:20 p.m. Eastern Time, Friday, October 3rd, in the year of our Lord, 2025. I'm taking my son for his driving test. Your prayers are greatly appreciated that he passes this test. He had to do it a couple months ago, and I'm not going to put the fault on him. It really stressed him out. He didn't pass because, I don't know if I've told you guys this, we used a place that was still under COVID protocol, and this is the year of our Lord 2025. And they put a GoPro camera on the dashboard of the car. My wife sat in the car with my son. The driving person from the DMV called my wife's cell phone, got on the speakerphone, told my wife she wasn't allowed to say anything at all. And then using the remote camera, observed my kid driving and was telling him he did all the driving stuff. He was totally fine with all the driving stuff. It was the parking where they wanted him to go from a stop sign in reverse and pull into a parking spot. But there were multiple available parking spots, and they told him pull into the parking spot, and he was trying to get them to say which parking spot, and they were frustrated with him, and I guess they didn't realize there were multiple available parking spots, and it flustered him greatly, and he messed it up, and then was so flustered when he pulled out to go back inside, he went in the wrong lane on the road and immediately was disqualified, and he was beside himself, furious with it. He's actually a very good driver. I let him drive me around all the time, but he was so frustrated. So driving test today at 4:20. Yeah, I know. You can make a joke there, too. Nonetheless, prayers are appreciated. Before we talk about the invasion of Memphis, I want to take a couple of phone calls on this war. And by the way, a well-placed source tells me that things are about to get even worse for the drug cartels. A well-placed source who is listening to me live sent me a note. So, all right, Wayne, we're gonna go to you first. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
I'm all right. How you doing?
Great.
Cool. All right. So, I've had a question for a while now. We all know Middle East has been fighting forever. Always wars over there, that kind of thing. The latest thing with Israel and Palestine was the attack by Hamas against Israel on October 7. But they've been fighting longer than that. I'm not informed at all on previous history. Can you help me out with that?
Where do we want to begin?
Maybe with the Canaanites, but I'm not sure. Yeah. I mean,
Seriously, that's where I was going to start. So God gives Abraham this land flowing with milk and honey, but God has a sense of humor, so there's no oil. And it tells Abraham it's going to be in your family's land for kingdom come. Abraham decides to have a kid with his wife's maid and names the kid Ishmael, and then has another kid with his wife Sarah named Isaac. And you have the Jews and the Arabs begin right there. And they've hated each other ever since. Now, God gave Israel the land, and we actually have the archaeological evidence here. And you know what? Let me not be flippant with this one, and let me give you guys the actual history here, because I think the actual history matters. So, Wayne, just listen on the radio. Thanks for calling in. Let me give you guys the real history here. There are a bunch of disparate tribes in the Holy Land. You had the Ammonites, you had the Amalekites, you had you name it. In fact, if you go to Amos 1, Amos is my favorite of the Old Testament books. You have the Gazans, you have the Edomites, you have the Ammonites, you have the Moabites. You have Judah and you have Israel, and there are all these disparate tribes. When God sends the Jews out of Egypt into the Holy Land, they conquer, defeat, and they're told, slaughter everybody. God actually tells the Israelites to commit genocide. Why? First of all, God knows everything, and he knows they're not going to, but why did he want them to? What happens? They start sleeping around with the pagan tribes, and they start bringing in the pagan ways, start worshiping other gods. Ultimately, they get sent into exile. They are allowed by Cyrus, the Babylonians or the Persians, to come back and rebuild the Holy Land. Alexander the Great then comes through and conquers, and the Middle East is split into multiple kingdoms after Alexander the Great dies. But what is well settled is that the land of Israel was the land of the Jews. And it was so well settled that when the Romans conquer Israel, it's divided into Samaria and Judah. Samaria were the northern kingdom. Judah was the southern kingdom. And when the Romans conquer it, the Jews are allowed special privilege. They don't have to make sacrifices to the emperor. This is how established Israel is as being the land of the Jews. The Jews who live in the land of Judea now, as the Romans rename it, are the only people within the entirety of the Roman Empire not required to make a sacrifice to the Roman emperor or the gods. Why? Because the Jews took their faith so seriously. The Romans knew the Jews would rather exterminate themselves than make a sacrifice to the Roman emperor. That they respected Judaism. Judaism, of all the religions of the Roman Empire, Judaism was given a special set-apart distinction. In fact, when the Christians come along after Christ, originally the Christians were viewed as a sect of Judaism. And it was the Jews who went to the Romans and said, we're throwing these people out of our synagogues. They're not us. They believe in something else. Thus began the Christian persecution, and thus began the animosity of Christians towards Jews. Now, there's a lot of revision in that, well, the Jews killed Jesus. No. If you actually read the Bible, it's the Romans and the Jews. It's the Gentiles and the Jews together. Everybody kills Jesus. It's not on the Jews. The special hatred between Christians and Jews in the Middle East came when the Jews threw the Christians out of the synagogues and said, they're not Jews, they're something else, and the Christian persecutions began. They were no longer accepted under the Jewish rule within the Roman Empire. Well, you fast forward a few decades to 70 AD, the Romans have enough of the Jews' constant rebellions and go level the temple in Jerusalem, tear it down, and still the Jews refuse to assimilate into Rome. So the Emperor Hadrian, Hadrian's Wall in Great Britain, the Emperor Hadrian is the greatest expanse of the Roman Empire. Emperor Hadrian finally has enough. And he says Jews are no longer allowed to live in Judea. And the Romans go to Judea and they round up every Jew and they pack them up and get them out of there. And what happens? It leaves a vacuum. And what happens in about 140, 160 AD, the Arab tribes take the Jewish land. And they begin to systemically rewrite the history. Now, the Romans changed the name from Judea to Palestine. Sound familiar? Yes. Why did the Romans change the name to Palestine? Because where did the Jewish kingdom start? With David. And what did David do? David defeated the Philistines by killing Goliath. And the Romans called the Philistines the Palestinians. And they were a group of disparate Arab tribes who they allowed to settle the land. So the Jews had it up until that time. Now, when Rome Christianized, the Jews started trickling back in. In World War I and World War II, fast forward all the way to World War I and World War II, the Jews are there. Now, here's what happened in the meantime. Rome Christianizes under Constantine. The Christians Jesus on the cross says, forgive them. The Christians say, screw forgiveness, we hate the Jews, completely reject what Jesus told them about forgiveness, and decide the Jews are going to be second-class citizens now as payback for everything. And the Christians say money lending is a sin. We can't be charging people interest or sinning. The Bible says we shouldn't do this. We're going to make the Jews be the bankers. Well, and then they say we can't be entertaining each other as actors and actresses. Why? Because that's lying. The Bible says don't bear false witness. Being an actor or an actress is lying because you're pretending to be someone who you aren't. It's kind of idolatrous, and we sure love it, but we can't participate. Let's make the Jews do it. Guess what the Jews get really, really, really good at? Money and acting. Do the Jews control Hollywood? Yes. Why? The Christians made them do it. Are the Jews in charge of a lot of financial institutions? Yes. Why? The Christian guilds of the Middle Ages forced the Jews against their will to do it. The Christian says, we're not going to be the sinners. You people are going to be the sinners. And then they realize, what have we done? The Jews are in charge of all the financial institutions. Oh my gosh, let's make them the scapegoat for our mismanagement of money and kill them all. And they tried with Hitler. Given the Holocaust and the fact that the Jews had already been repatriating to the Holy Land over about 1,000 years and had a big population there, and they were systemically persecuted by the Ottomans, the United Nations, after World War II, all the world's countries get together and say, you know what? Given what we did to the Jews, we should give them back their land after all this time. So they get most of their land back, except for a portion of it. The Palestinians, by this time considered a people, even though they actually are divided Arab tribes under a common name, the Palestinians. They pack up one night, take their keys with them. The Arab neighbors say, we're going to invade and kill all the Jews and you can have your land back. So they leave in the middle of the night, take their keys with them. And to this day, many of those families still have the keys because guess what happened? The Jews actually won. Turns out when you kill people ruthlessly over 3,000 years of persecution, they get really good at defending themselves. And the Jews were really much better at defending themselves than the Arabs were at killing the Jews. The Jews won and took more of the land for themselves and built up a buffer state around what was actually given to Israel, and they expand their nation. And all the Arabs are like, oh, we're the victims. We're the victims, the mean old Jews. No, you're not the victims. You're the ones who tried to murder them, and they kicked your butt. And they refused to be murdered. So what happened? The Palestinians, they packed up in the middle of the night, took their keys with them. They moved into Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, waited it out, and they waited, and they waited, and they waited, and they've never come home. And it turns out that nobody likes the Palestinians. The Jordanians have an ethnicity, the Emiratis have an ethnicity, the Saudis have an ethnicity, the Egyptians have an ethnicity. The Palestinians are a bunch of desperate tribes that don't particularly like each other, let alone the Jews or anyone else. The Jordanians don't like them, the Egyptians don't like them, so they threw them out and said, go back to Gaza and the West Bank. And they've gone back there and they've plotted killing the Jews. You know, it's interesting, all the anti-Semitism that is out there right now in the world. What is it? It's the Jews refusing to be murdered. They refuse. The Palestinians and the anti-Semites show up and say, hey, we're going to kill you today. And the Jews are like, not so fast. Some of them sadly die because the Palestinians and the anti-Semites are pretty ruthless exterminators of Jews, and they want the Jews to just roll over and take it. And the Jews are like, nah, we're not going to do that. I'm with the Jews here. If you're upset about a supposed genocide in Gaza, the Israelis have been far more civil in how they've carried out their war. And the reason they have this war is because the Palestinians decided to invade Israel on October 7th. And the rest of the world holds the Israelis to a standard no other nation is held to, in that they're not allowed to actually win a war. Why? Because the Western world, particularly Europe, is still derived from the very people in the Middle Ages who forced the Jews to do the jobs they didn't want to do because those people in Europe hated the Jews. And they still hate the Jews. The things of the world hate the things of God, Scripture says. The Jews were God's chosen people. Now, we can argue theology and about the church replacing the Jews, et cetera, all that, but I'm just telling you, the world hates the Jews theologically because they were the first chosen of God, but they hate the Jews in modern times philosophically because, well, they forced the Jews to do the jobs they didn't want to do. The Jews got really good at those jobs, and then they needed somebody to scapegoat for their incompetence, and they said, let's blame the Jews. So they gave the Jews their own territory where they still were impressively good at everything, and everybody's got to have a scapegoat. The reason the Palestinians hate the Jews right now is because the Palestinians have been given lots of territory in the West Bank and Gaza, and they have maintained it as a third world hellhole. And if their governments had to acknowledge that they were the ones who actually turned the land into a third world hellhole, their people would rebel against them. Instead, they blame the Jews. Thus, we are today where we are. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. I am delighted to have you with me today. The phone number again is 877-973-7425. It is an open line Friday. I have gone too long in the last segment explaining the history there of the Jews and the Palestinians and the Arab hatred and all that history. So bear with me. I will take your phone calls in the next hour. I got to tell you, I am, well, as you probably can tell if you've read my morning pieces or heard me on the radio, I'm ready for the weekend. I am tired. It has been a long week, and my wife is slowly healing. My son has his driving lesson, their driving test this afternoon, and then I plan on sleeping. I'm getting in my hot tub this evening. This is not an ad for the Georgia Spa Company, but I did get a hot tub from them, and the weather has gotten cold at night, and I'm going to park my happy butt in my hot tub tonight and watch Slow Horses, catch up on the last episode, and then go to sleep, not in the hot tub, but in my bed. And then I'm going to watch football all weekend. College and NFL. Now I need to tell you about Americans for Prosperity. They actually do need your help reaching out to members of Congress. There's bipartisan regulatory reform in Congress to speed up the permitting process for building power plants and pipelines in the country, among other things. And they actually need you to get Congress to push it. And if you go to prosperityispossible.com, you can sign up to be an activist, to call your member of Congress and ask them to support this plan. It's got bipartisan support, by the way. It's not a purely partisan issue. It's probably got the support to overcome the filibuster in the Senate, but they really need to call for this to be able to speed up building pipelines and power plants and extracting rare earth minerals that we need to combat China. It would really make the process more efficient. So if you will go to prosperityispossible.com, you can sign up with AFP today, and you can take action to get Congress to speed up permitting reform. It's common sense conservative solution to stimulate the economy and provide enough power for the data centers and for you and me without the lights going out. Prosperityispossible.com, brought to you by Americans for Prosperity.